Well, it's John Black, Super Chemist. I think this is part 4.
Oh, we don't know Sparrow's gender yet. They're going to tell us when they're older. Right now we use they, them pronouns.
What happens if Sparrow decides... How old is Sparrow? She's 4 now, right? Or Day is 4. Day is 4.
Sparrow is 1 year old. Hazel has been non-binary for 4 years.
Hazel changed her gender at 4, but is now 8, and Sparrow is 1.
Yeah.
Sparrow, when she gets to say 3 or even 2, when they can first start to talk, if her first words are "I want to be non-binary," or "I want to be a boy," or "I want to be a girl," would you just respect anything that a 2-year-old child would say? You accepted a 4-year-old's insistence on changing gender. Would you accept a 2-year-old?
Keep in mind, this whole family, there's 3 of them. They got a throuple, or whatever you call it, where you got you got 3 parents, right? All of them are trans, non-binary. All 3 of them. And now they're going to have 2 kids they're both trans-binary. Really.
And would you accept a 2-year-old?
I would accept that child was exploring. I think that at that age, gender
a child of 2 is in no. I'm sorry to be the stick in the mud here. A 2-year-old kid hasn't got a Scooby-Doo about any of this stuff. The idea that you would literally, the idea that you would even, the idea that you as a parent, I'm sorry,
I would play along, follow the child.
The idea that you as a parent would even countenance the idea that a 2-year-old child has any ability to form any serious perception of gender, I think, frankly, I put it to you respectfully, is utterly ridiculous and actually damaging to that child.
Yeah.
Isn't it toxic and bizarre that at 2 we are telling someone you are a boy because of your anatomy?
Yes, it is normal because that's what a parent is supposed to do, is direct and teach. I've heard so many female women, right, mothers, single mothers, telling me that it is not their duty to direct and teach their child. That not only is it not their duty, it isn't their right. It isn't their right as a parent to direct and teach their child.
Isn't it make more sense that if a 2-year-old genuinely has no ability to process what a gender is, as you said, that I don't, tell them what their gender is, and I don't emphasize gender constantly.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a 2-year-old and, he doesn't know math, so, I mean, you don't want to tell him what 1 plus 1 is 2. No. He needs to figure it out himself. Because my job isn't as a parent to direct and teach my child. No. He needs to teach me. Because a 2-year-old is smarter than a 30-year-old or a 20-year-old or whatever.
I let them be what they are, which is a toddler.
You offer structure. What could be more of a structure than actually saying to your child, this is your name and that's your name? And if when you get to be an adult you want to change your name, then you become your own adult, your own responsibility, you take your own decisions. Part of being a parent is until a child reaches adult age, actually the parent takes these decisions. What are you doing as a parent?
I guess my opinion is that I feel what you're expressing is a bit of childism, which is assuming that someone has to be a legal adult to have the capacity to know themselves.
Childism, isn't it?
This is what pedophiles say.
So giving a child a gender because of its anatomy, assuming that they're boy or girl, or giving them a name, all that would be childism from your point of view.
Not giving them, but forcing them to use them regardless of what the child wanted.
So if a 3-year-old child decides, I'm no longer a boy or girl, I'm no longer going to be called Bob, I want to be called Doris, whatever it may be, if a 3-year-old child decides to do that, and I object and say, no, your name is Bob, not Doris, and you're a boy, not a girl, at 3, then I'm guilty of childism.
Potentially, yes.
If your kid says he's a pirate, you don't automatically just gouge his eye out and give him an eye patch and chop off his leg and give him a peg leg. That's childism. You know that? Did you know that? And they were in a movie. She's going to talk about these movies that she watched about these trans kids. This is Blair White. She's on YouTube.
disturbed me. It was very apparent to me, and in my opinion, the mother in this film was pushing Avery to, at the very least, be trans, at the very most be trans, and make a business out of it to make money for herself, for the mother. Every single scene in this movie was some sort of business transaction, was a photo shoot for the kid, was an interview, was a radio appearance, was her being forced to sell a book, going to events, and at one point, Avery actually says, "This is ruining my life."
We're going to Washington, D.C. We actually go and meet with our senators and representatives. After we do that, we go and sit and sell some of Avery's books for a little while.
I just don't want to even have a book. I've done too much in this world. It's ruined my life enough, and now everyone in this world is going to know.
That's a boy who says that she's a girl.
And it's just going to make my life worse.
A couple years ago, we wanted people to know.
Yeah, I did, but now that was really stupid, silly mistake, and now I don't.
Yeah, who would have thought a 5-year-old would change their mind about something? Who would have thought?
While the mom was a really shitty character in my opinion, because even after this young child is expressing, "You are ruining my life by putting me out there so much, I don't want to be this person," the mother still takes her to events after that scene and is still doing stuff in the public and doing exactly what this child said she doesn't want to do. It was very apparent to me that the mother has made her child being transgender her entire life, her entire business. The mom makes a living off of it, and it is basically it's the mom's whole thing. She has monetized her child being transgender, which honestly, I'm probably going to get heat for this, but it was very questionable to me if Avery really felt trans, because there were really no scenes in the movie where Avery was speaking for herself and describing the experience of being trans. Throughout the movie, Avery talks about just wanting to be normal. Doesn't mean that she's not going to be transgender later on as well, but it was very interesting because in the movie the mom was like, "Oh yeah, she's a tomboy, she likes boy things. If you think that's weird, well, why do you think tomboys are weird?" And tomboys aren't weird, but it is a hallmark, not a deciding factor, of a transgender child that when they're young, they like playing with girl stuff. And short of this mom dyeing the kid's hair pink and dressing her in all pink, which seems very forced to overcompensate for the fact that she likes doing all boy things, it just came across as weird to me. That was my honest opinion from the film. In my notes, I wrote, "Struck me as a business venture, Avery being trans." I wrote the word "suspicious." I wrote, "Avery seems unhappy doing book interviews. Mom seems very happy doing interviews and books." And all that is something that I don't like about a lot of mothers of famous trans children, is that it feels like it's more about the mom, and the mom receiving accolades for being such an amazing, accepting, loving mother and making money, than it is about the child. Next we have 4-year-old Phoenix. Now this one made me cry during the movie. I was watching this with Joey and I was like trying to hide my tears. I was like, oh my god, this poor little kid. His parents basically talked him up at 4 years old to being transgender because he likes occasionally playing with girls' toys and wearing dresses. Now, again, while that can be a telltale sign, that is not everything. You could just tell it was a little boy being imaginative, but the parents were so dead set on him being trans, and in fact also thought that their other son was transgender because the other son would sometimes want to play with girls' toys as well. They took Phoenix to protest, again making the trans thing their whole identity and their whole hobby basically, and the protests scared Phoenix, which was really upsetting to see. Like, why are you taking your 4-year-old to a protest? Like, don't even do that. There was a moment where the mom, who seemed very paranoid and unstable, by the way,
Yeah. You take a 4-year-old to a protest? Like, who does that? Do these people care at all about? They literally hate their kids. That's like me saying, well, I'm going to go into a war zone with my 4-year-old. I don't care if he lives or dies. Not that the protest, all protests are going to get out of hand, but there's always a chance that a protest could get out of hand. A sane person would never take a 4-year-old to a protest. Never.
Took Phoenix at 4 years old to a church and tried to make Phoenix come out as LGBT in front of everyone.
Anyone here who would claim their identity publicly as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning, intersex, pansexual, asexual, or any category that I've left out?
They see this, in school all day, and at their house with their crazy nut job parents, right? And then they go to church and they got to see it there too. And this isn't brainwashing, really.
Looks like a little.
Do you want to tell everyone?
That's a boy.
Girl? Okay. Phoenix would like you to know that she's a girl and she prefers she and her pronouns.
Does he? Does he really want that? It didn't seem like he wanted that.
If that was not one of the most disturbing clips. So very constant theme of these mothers speaking for the child. Like in the case of Avery and Phoenix, I heard the moms talking about them being trans. And I never heard the kids talking really about being trans. Avery once or twice, but it was in a very nonchalant way, and it just was not, it didn't come across as, I don't know, it was just a mess. So here's the gag with Phoenix. A couple years later, after the first filming of them being at the church, coming out as LGBT, pansexual, queer, blah, blah, Phoenix went back to being a boy. Before picture day in the movie, Phoenix said, no, I don't want to go to school as a girl, and I want to be a boy again. And it was very telling that that happened before picture day, because I remember being a kid. I remember having maybe like a bad hair day, bad haircut, and not wanting to go to school because I didn't want to present myself in that way because it was ultimately embarrassing. Basically, this kid was wearing pink at home but didn't want to do it at school, didn't want to actually live his life that way.
The reaction when people hear that we have two trans kids is pretty shock and awe.
I always have been a boy, but I started to realize it in first grade when I told my mom I wanted to have my hair short and that I wanted to look less girly.
So James approached us in a casual way by dropping hints from the time he was 7 until he was 8. He would say things like, I'm half boy, half girl, half gorilla, and
half gorilla. And she took it all serious. You know what I mean? This woman and these parents have been brainwashing this kid since he was born. Both her kids now are trans, really. How come the entire family is trans and these trans nut job parents? Anytime you see a nut job parent, their entire family is trans. When it's a 1 in a 10 million chance of your kid being trans.
When James was 8 years old, he asked to transition.
Yeah, because he wants to transition because it's actually a girl who's gay. Instead of them just letting them be gay, society has this hate towards gays. That you can't be gay, you have to be a trans person so that you're normal and you're sleeping with the right, you know what I mean? That girl has to be a man and do sex change to be a man so that she's normal when she sleeps with that other woman. Yeah, that's what it's about.
To use he and him for pronouns. He then, this past year, changed his name legally and his gender markers legally. He just now, a month ago, started hormone blockers.
That means that he's sterilized. They just sterilized their daughter or their trans son, whatever you want to call her. Yeah, they just sterilized their child.
Implant. It is to prevent his puberty. It will prevent a menstruation cycle and breast development. And he is counting down the days until he can start testosterone, which would be the first time something permanent would be happening. Because at that point, it would affect fertility.
In fact, you're sterilized. Yeah. She actually knows it's going to affect the fertility. So she knows that she's sterilizing her child. She literally knows it. Now, what if this child is one of the 999,999 people who aren't trans and that, they just got caught up in this? And they're all saying, no, it's 1 in a million chance that this kid, might not change his mind, so we're going to sterilize him. But that doesn't make any sense.
You use a blocker and go on to testosterone. Your eggs would never mature.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to go through female puberty for that, which is something you could do.
I could, but I don't want to.
Why?
Because it's uncomfortable.
What's
to think of that.
So 12-year-old or whatever age this kid is, 10, 12, whatever, I don't know. So that they're too dumb to get a tattoo because it's permanent.